Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix 412th film from 2021. It's the action thriller called Beckett. It's directed by Ferdinando Cito Filomarino and stars John David Washington, Boyd Holbrook, Vicky Krieps, Alicia Vikander, and Michael Stuhlbarg. I am Jesse, I'm your host. Thank you for joining me today as we venture our way through the Netflix original film catalogue. As always, if Beckett is a film that you haven't seen yet, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on because we will spoil this film as we go. And we do start our show with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one is about an American tourist who crashes his car, which kills his girlfriend and leads to him being chased by corrupt police. There we go. That's the thriller side of things. So if this is the type of film that you might be interested in, maybe you need to give it a watch. But let's get into it. How did this end up on Netflix? What's the story behind the film? The name Beckett, the title Beckett, that is literally the character's name, the main protagonist's name. That's his surname. That's what he's referred to. However, this did have the working title of Born to be Murdered. So, I'm not sure. Is it a better title? I don't know. It's interesting because obviously this guy, I'm not sure he was born to be murdered, but throughout this film, the idea is that he's trying to be murdered. The tagline was "Survival Lies Within," and I think that probably ties in pretty well with our character Beckett and his progression throughout this film. On Netflix, their logline on their scroll page, it says, "Pursued over cliffs, through rivers, on trains. What begins as a romantic escape becomes a fight to survive for an American tourist on the run in Greece." And then while you're watching, another line that Netflix prepared, it says, "An American tourist goes on the run in Greece after a tragic accident plunges him into a political conspiracy that makes him a target for assassination." There we go. It's quite a bit of info there from Netflix in relation to what the film is all about. So the only other title around the world in Chinese, it was called Doom Holiday. Don't mind that one. That's a funny little one. The film was announced in April of 2019, and that John David Washington, Alicia Vikander, Boyd Holbrook, and Vicky Krieps had been cast in the film. As mentioned before, it was titled Born to be Murdered then, and it was going to be produced by Luca Guadagnino. Filming got underway in Athens that same month. Then we head to October of 2020, where Netflix acquired the distribution rights for the film and set the release for 2021. And that's in January of 2021, where they announced that the film had been retitled to Beckett. This is the first film to shoot in the ancient ruins of Delphi in Greece, and that's one of the opening shots, which is quite mesmerizing, I would say, in this film. John David Washington, he put on weight, a lot of weight for this role, so he didn't appear like a fit, bustling sort of action hero and I think you probably, if you've seen the film, you'd understand how much he is on the run in this film. This premiered at the Locarno Film Festival on the 4th of August 2021 before hitting Netflix worldwide on the 13th of August 2021. Filmed in a lot of locations through Greece as well as Athens, and it was nominated at the Locarno Film Festival for the director for the Variety Piazza Grande Award. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? On Rotten Tomatoes, it has 76 reviews from critics, so that's quite a few. It's rotten, however, on 49%, and the audience has it at even lower, has it at 34%. That's on more than 250 ratings, so pretty poor there. IMDb, 30,000 ratings, sits at a 5.7 out of 10, so a little bit higher than the others, and Letterboxd sits at a 2.8 out of 5 on 26,500 ratings and has been logged by 34,000 people. So under that 3 barrier for Letterboxd of what could be classified as one of the better received films. On Metacritic, their traffic light system of red, yellow, and green, the critics have it at 52 out of 100 on 24 reviews. That is yellow. And the audience has it at a 4.6 out of 10 on 33 reviews, also in the yellow. So mixed bag of reviews here, possibly more on the negative side. What about my early thoughts? What am I thinking about this film? So John David Washington, I was on board. Love the guy, loved him in Tenet, Black Klansman, whole bunch of great films. Malcolm and Marie, a Netflix original film we covered on this show that I really, really enjoyed. This film, however, once it started, I was nothing but bored throughout, unfortunately. So I'm going to be on that negative side of things. So let's get into the characters. And there's not an awful lot to say about the characters, realistically. The film's called Beckett for this character Beckett, and he's that American tourist who's in Greece with his girlfriend April. The film opens with them having or rekindling after a disagreement and bringing it together to enjoy their trip and seeing some touristy locations and settings. And I guess April's personality is a little bit sleazy, a little bit on that side. And he's the opposite. He's a little bit timid and easily worried and doesn't want her to step out into, areas that are fenced off at tourist locations. And I guess this is how we see some development in him as a character, because he's innocent and trustworthy of many people to start the film off, and as it progresses, it turns him into a not an action hero, but pretty much someone who takes actions into his own hands. He's fully developed and changed into someone that is probably a little bit scared and frightened of conflict, into someone who is happy to take that conflict on. The other characters in this film, Eleni and Lena, these are two activists, two Greek activists who help Beckett along the way, not only in his travels and a little bit of context about the political turmoil that's occurring in Greece, but they're there to support him throughout the way. He needs some support because everyone else seems to turn on him. And this, I've said spoilers, but Stephen Tynan, this is, I guess, his goal, Beckett. Once he's had this accident, his girlfriend's dead, he works out the police are corrupt and trying to kill him. His one goal is to get to the American embassy in Athens, and Stephen Tynan is this employee at the US embassy in Athens, and he's a little bit framed so one-dimensionally. It's sort of hard not to see him any other way than a guy that Beckett can't trust. That's where I'll leave that. So the director, Ferdinando Cito Filomarino, 6 directing and writing credits. No other directing credits since this, but is obviously recognised and known as Luca Guadagnino's protege, and often the frequent second unit director on his films, including Call Me By Your Name, and also his ex-boyfriend. I believe they were together when this film was made. They broke up after it came out, or in between it being made and being released. So there you go, a little bit of a backstory on this film. Some scenes. What stood out? What didn't work? This was hard because it's there's not a lot that happens. As I said before, I was pretty bored. So things that worked. This is towards the end of the film. Beckett has been punched, kicked, shot, tackled. He's had a lot of injuries, including having his arm in a sling. And he finally ditches the sling off his arm towards the end and walks through this hectic street protest in Athens. This was really well put together. It felt immersive, as well as the follow-up. He goes off, does some things, comes back onto the street after pretty much demolishing Tynan. And just those streets and the extras and the explosions and the noise and the sound, that all worked really well. However, the rest of there's a few bits that didn't work. I think the car crash to kill April off at the start, it was so prolonged for no reason. Beckett was always going to fall asleep and crash. And I'm not sure if that's a lack of skill in editing or directing, but there was no question. It wasn't a surprise when that happened. Beckett stops at this cliff at one stage where he's gone to visit the house where April passed away, where the car crashed through it. The cops are chasing him. He stops at this cliff, and it was this huge, big drop. Good camera work to show how big the drop was, and he jumps, and you're like, there's no way he'll survive that. And then the reverse camera shot shows how small the jump actually was. So I'm not sure if that's trying to show his point of view, but to me it just felt so grating to see those two different shots. Eleni and Lena, these activists, they were just happy to put Beckett in the trunk of his car, and then they happen to have bolt cutters just sitting in their car so he can take his handcuffs off. And then he hyperventilates in the backseat of the car. It just was a little bit of a comical sort of trek to Athens. And finally, Beckett jumps from a car park roof onto a moving car at the end. I know I mentioned the idea of him as a character is progressing and changing, but this was a little bit too much. Some themes, some ideas. Corrupt police, politicians, the far right-wing movements. I don't think you really need to understand what's actually going on in Greece in this. I mean, there's a little bit of commentary about the impact the European Union has on Greece, and I guess other nations too, but you don't actually need to know the politics in Greece to understand this narrative. But the opposite side of things, the idea of Americanism and the idea or the inability of Beckett to blend in a very black character in a very white country running around. He stands out like nothing, and I think that's probably clever casting, but also the inability to understand the language and the politics and the helplessness and isolation when there's no one there to help you. That was all done fairly well. There's obviously a little bit of guilt from Beckett and regret of his actions, especially when he lies to cover up the accident at the start with his girlfriend. And this plays out in a lot of these sort of thriller films, but the idea of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, definitely there for Beckett too. What else did I take away from the film? I sort of touched on this in the themes, but the effective part of the film, I think, is the language, or the language barrier that Beckett faces. There's no subtitles for the audience on screen to translate what he is hearing, so it brings the audience in effectively on the ride and being confused and not knowing what's going on. I think it'd be a really interesting watch if you'd seen the film, how it's meant to be made, and then see what the Greek characters are actually saying, or if you do speak Greek, watching this and understanding what the police are saying at times too, might give a little bit of give the film away a little bit more than it does. Some questions, some pondering, some thoughts, some ideas on this one. I just had to ask, why did Beckett have to come across this couple when he's trying to escape? He comes across this couple that work with bees. It just felt weird and out of place. I don't know, it felt so random. Just a little side note. The other thing that's very tough too, like, why should the audience feel connected to April and Beckett's relationship when we don't really get to see them as a couple? That she's killed off in the first 10 minutes or so. It just felt hard that, and I guess the idea of the film isn't him getting revenge or justice for her death, it's survival, so that makes sense, but it just felt hard. You can't connect to this guy and feel the sorrow when you don't even know the connection he had with his girlfriend. And this Tynan guy at the embassy, I mentioned he was nothing but going to be bad. It was too obvious, and that sort of frustrated me too. It would have been nice to have the ideal that he's going to the American embassy, he's going to be supported, but that never felt like that was going to happen. How did Beckett know that the kidnapped car was in the trunk at the end? Maybe I missed something, but just the idea that he goes to all this trouble to jump off the roof onto this car because he knows that the kid's in the boot. I don't know. I didn't get that feeling at all, and I don't mind this. The idea that maybe the film is a trip that Beckett's having. He does take one of April's pills at the start when he goes to the place where she died, and I think they're leftover sleeping pills or thing. Is this just a dream sequence for him? It's an interesting interpretation. I don't know. Other than that, I'm ready to wrap this one up. We give the film a rating out of 5. For me, it's slow. If you enjoy watching John David Washington run, then this might be the film for you, because he does an awful lot of running in this film. Otherwise, to me, it was a bit of a slogfest. I didn't really feel on the edge of my seat like I want to in these types of films. So I'm going to give this a 2 out of 5. A little bit disappointed from me. We're on socials. We've got Instagram, we've got Facebook, and we have X, formerly known as Twitter. I just wanted to put the question out this week, is in relation to Athens, is it a good city to visit? I liked visually how it appeared on the screen. Obviously, there was a lot of protest and violence that were occurring in the streets, but it just looked like a nice city to visit. So, is it worth a trip? Let me know in the notes. Other than that, next episode, we're back with an international film. This one is from Germany. It's a 2021 thriller called Black Island. Or in German, I'm not very good at German, but it's Schwarz in Cell. It's directed by Miguel Alejandre and stars Hans Zickler, Alice Dwyer, and Mercedes Müller. There we go, a German film for next week. Hopefully you're on board, another thriller. Give it a watch before next week if you can. I hope you enjoyed the show today. I will see you next week.